Every serious app runs on data, but organizing that data the right way, that's the real challenge. Let me show you how Django makes it ridiculously easy with something called models. A Django model is where we define database tables in Django. In part 4 of this series, we will define our database tables using Django model and handle any issue that may occur with migrations. If you are new to this channel, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment to support the content. Code with Django being a battery-included framework, it comes with capability to support relational databases such as MySQL, Postgresql, okay? But here, I'm going to integrate Postgresql into our Django project. Django integrates a SQLite 3. We can see from our previous video where we did the installation and structure, we had the db.sql3 that we use to run our application. So this is provided out of the box by Django, because SQLite itself is a file-based database that comes pre-installed with Python. But this is not good for production. The purpose of this file-based system is for development. But when you move to the production stage, you need to use a more scalable database such as Postgresql, MySQL. Okay. And many developers would use SQLite locally and switch to a more scalable database like Postgresql, MySQL on production. But best practice suggests that we should keep the local environment as close to the production environment as possible. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We're going to make sure that the database we use locally is also the database we're going to use in production and every other environment that we're going to run, like staging and testing. So I had an older version of PostgreSQL already installed in my system, but for this tutorial or for this project, I had to install a newer version. So all I had to do is to open my browser and search for PostgreSQL downloads. Once I have this page, I can click on the downloads here, and based on my operating system, I select which one I'm using. I'm using Mac OS, so I'm going to select that. And there's this installer that makes it easy to install PostgreSQL. We can click on this download installer, and from here we can see the latest version. The time of this recording is 18.0. so looking at the different architecture, I can select the architecture I'm using. I'm using Mac OS X, so I'm gonna click on this and download it. So I have it already downloaded in my system, and like I told you guys, I have two PostgreSQL installed on my system right now. One was installed using HomePro and the other one was installed using this installer. So looking at when you do the installation, it's going to be installed in the library PostgreSQL. So we can see in the library PostgreSQL, I have the latest version 18, and if I look at this file, oopsie, I can see here at the top here, this is what I had previously. So my PostgreSQL was my PSQL command was redirected to this particular guy. So I was using PostgreSQL version 16. So after I did the installation, I had to change the path to look at version 18. All right. So once you have that, you can easily say PSQL, and let me just say PSQL version, and we can see I'm using is redirecting to my newest version 18. So now you have to be very careful here, because the data that is loaded has nothing to do with what we did in the dots. Is it zhrc and this file? All right, it has nothing to do with what we did in this file here. So let me go back again. So here I think what we did here was just to direct PSQL to the right version, but the data that is loaded, that is all the database that you've been creating, will load the previous one. Okay, that is, from in my case, it loaded the older version, the version 16. So I learned that when you install two versions, the first version of course uses the port 5432. Okay, so once you install subsequent version, it uses the port, it increment the port. So my newest version is at port 5433. Okay, if I get to install another one, it's going to be 5434 and so on and so forth. So in order to run PSQL, for example, I'm going to say PSQL, I'm going to specify the port 5433, and I can do this Postgres, okay, and put my password, and there I have it. And when I do like this, I can see that I don't have so many databases created. But let me say I quit this and I do the same thing but without specifying the port, and I do like this and I check my database. We can see all the database that I had from the previous version. All right, once we have our PostgreSQL installed, we need a driver that's going to help us to link the PostgreSQL database to Python, because Python can communicate directly with PostgreSQL database. For that driver, we have so many drivers out there, but the most popular one is CyclePG. And from Django 4 and above, we can use CyclePG 3. CyclePG comes in two forms. It comes as a source and also comes as binary. Binary is good for beginners and development, while CyclePG, the source, is good for production. So we are going to install the two. We are going to use the binary for development and the source for production. So first we're going to use UV and we're going to add CyclePG, the source. And once we have the source, we're going to add in the development environment, we're going to add CyclePG binary. Alright, so it is now recommended to hardcode sensitive information like the database credential that we're going to create very soon. It's not recommended to hardcode this in the setting. The optimal way is to use environment variable. That's why we had the Django environ installed. So for that, we're going to create the .env. I think we had it already from our previous video, and we had our secret key placed here as a key value pair, and we are going to install like just set first the key for the various database information that we're going to create later on. All right, so we are going to need the name of the database. So I'm gonna put it like this. For now it's gonna be empty. Once we create them, we're gonna replace them here, or we're gonna add the keys to the various values here. So we need the DB user, we need the DB passwords, we need the DB hosts. Of course, in development, it's going to be localhost by default. We need the DB port. All right, so we're going to use the port 5433 in this case. All right, so back on our terminal, I'm right now, if I check how I'm connected, con info, I can see that I'm connected to the database PostgreSQL, and the user I'm using is PostgreSQL. I'm connected to the database Postgres, and the user I'm using is Postgres. Okay, so this is a super user. Let me make sure I'm connected. Okay, I'm connected to the old one, so I'm just gonna go out of this and connect to the new newer version. So it's PSQL. The port is gonna be 5433, and so when I use this -u uppercase, it means that I want to connect to the user Postgres and the database Postgres. So I don't need to use again the -d if I know that the name is the same as the database. Okay, so once I have that and I put my password, okay, I'm connected. And the first thing I want to do is to create the user. So the user and the password that the user is going to use. So I'm going to say create user, and I'm going to give the name of that user. I'm going to call it code with NO, and with the password. So remember, I don't know, SQL uses single quotes, okay, not double quote. So the password here is going to be code with NO 2025, should not forget our semicolon because this is SQL. So once you have that, we can see the role already exists because I created that already. So you can go ahead and run this command to create your own, and you can use your own username and you use your own password. So once we have that, we have to, once we create the user, we need to alter the user to add some privileges. Okay, one of the privileges that we can add is for the user to be able to create database, okay, and for the user to be able to log in. So we can say alter. So this is again SQL command or SQL query. So we can say alter user and we call the name code with NO, and we say with create DB. All right, create DB, and we can also add login in there. So once we run it, it's gonna add the roles, okay, to that user, or add these privileges. So this user will be able to create a database and will be able to log in as well. So once we have that, we want to log in with the new user. Okay, we want to log in with the new user. We have two ways we can do that. We can go out of this PsychoPG's PSQL shell and log in again using all the credential, or we can just switch, okay, using this /c. And when you use this /c, the first argument is usually the database. I just assume that I haven't created any database yet, so the database that always come by default is Postgres. So I'm gonna stick to the Postgres database, but I'm gonna enter with the new user, and I'm gonna put in the password that I use for that user. Okay, so now if I do the /con info, I can see the information. So the database Postgres and the client code with NO. All right. So the other way you could do that is to go out of this shell and log in using PSQL. Of course, you specify the port and the database and the user. Okay, and you can give the password that you use. So once you're there, you have already your user alongside the password. Now what you want to do is to create the database. Okay, create the database we're going to use. And right now we are connected to the database Postgres with the user, the user that we just created. So in order to create database, we can use this SQL command or this SQL statement, create database, and let's call it Todo Planner, and we're gonna put our semicolon. So I've already created this. If I do this, it's gonna say it already exists, but you can go ahead and create it. Once you create it, now you want to switch and make sure that you are connected to the database with the right user. Okay, so once again, if I do this info con info, I can see that I'm connected to with the right user, but the database is not the right database. So what I can do, two ways again, I can go out of this with /q and enter using PSQL and so on and so forth, or I can use the switch. Okay, in this case I don't need to mention the user again because I want to maintain the same user, but I'm gonna change the database. Instead of Postgres, I'm gonna say I want to switch to Todo Planner, and here we are. So if I do con info, I can see I have my database, Todo Planner, and the user code with NO. Alright, so I have all the information I need to add to the .env. So our database name was Todo Planner, and the database user was code with NO, and the password code with NO 2025. And the host, of course, is going to be localhost, and the port is going to be 5433. Now, using the Django Environ package, I'm going to consume this secret information into my code. So before we do that, I would like to do some modification from the previous series that we had. And we can see that we have in a setting we have the base.py and the def.py, And I actually went ahead and added the secret, the secret to consume the secret key here, and also to set up the environ here. I don't think this is the right way, because I think since we are importing everything from the base, I think it will be better for me to have this in the base. And if there's any modification that needs to be done in any of this environment, for example the development environment, we can just override it here. All right, so I'm gonna remove, I think, all of this plus the importation that we had. Okay, I'm gonna remove all of this and go to my base, and I think I'm gonna just put them here. Let's see. And I'm gonna remove the import environ and put it here. Okay, so perfect. I think I'm gonna just rearrange this real quick, because this guy comes before the base directory that was set, so I can just go down here. All right, so right now in this case we set up our Django environ, and here I'm gonna say if the debug is not set, it's gonna be false instead, just to make sure that anyone that needs the default, the debug capabilities should set it to true. So it's gonna consume the .env, and the secret is gonna be consumed here, and the debug also consumed here. All right, and whoever wants to override this can override this in the various environment. Okay, so once we have that, I also like to have the database here in my base.py. Okay, and anyone that wants to modify the database can do that like we did it here. Here we're using the SQLite, but if you don't want to modify the database, you can just comment out this and it's gonna inherit from the base. All right, so I'm just gonna see where I can put the database. I don't know, maybe after the templates I'm just gonna define the databases. So the thing about Django is that it can handle many databases. That's why you see this variable, this constant is called databases. All right, so once I have that, and I will say the default database that I'm gonna use is gonna be called default. Okay, so you see we have a dictionary. So the key here is gonna be the database name that you're using, or the setting you're going to use. We can have so many here, so we can also have testing, okay, and so on and so forth. So we can put as many databases as possible. So yeah, I'm gonna use first just the default. If I need other databases, I'm gonna add them. So we have to define the engine. So the engine here, we are switching from SQLite to using Postgresql, and we need the driver that we just installed, the PsychoPG driver that we install in order to communicate with Postgresql. So Django has this DjangoDB backend.postgresql that we can use as the engine, and it's gonna communicate with PsychoPG and link us with the Postgresql database. Now the name is gonna be consumed from our env, our env.env that we set up just a few moments ago, and I'm gonna use this env just like we did for the secret key, env dot, and if it's gonna be a string or a boolean or an integer, I'm gonna define it there. So for the name is gonna be a string, of course, so it's db name, and I have the user env string db user, and what else? Password db password, and what else? Hosts, it's gonna be db host, and we have the port. So for the port, I can either use string or I can use integer. So gonna say integer in this case, db port. All right, and for the development, I'm just gonna go ahead and just comment out this. Okay, and the database the database will be inherited from the base and used here. All right. Consider a Django app as a self-contained module within a larger Django project designed to provide specific and related functionality. Funny enough, when I started creating websites with Django, I used to think that after designing my database, each class is going to represent a Django application. Well, I was wrong. As long as you follow the three key characteristics of Django app, I think you're good to go. These key characteristics are: we have modularity that has to do with encapsulating features, encapsulating related feature, making the project easier to manage. We have reusability, making sure your application can be reused throughout different Django project. And lastly, we have the specific functionality that has to do with your Django app providing specific functionality to the entire system that you're building. And in line with this, I think I like to think of Django application as domain or business area and not table. Okay, so this is my thought process. If models belong to the same functionality, I will definitely group them in the same app. If a model could be reused in another project, I will definitely have them in a separate application. And when in doubt, I'll just maintain fewer apps and split them when the code too big. Okay, so following these principles, this is what I had. Okay, so we can see that the user, project, tags, and link all represent specific domain, and they can be reused in other Django application. All right, so the link will be used in both tags and project. And one of the reasons why I didn't have the label as an application is because the label is used only in the tax application. So it's kind of like it comes as a package. Okay, everything is encapsulated in the tax functionality. And also we have the category that is only used in the project application. So all of that is encapsulated in the project application. Of course, we have the user and we have the link. With the idea of considering each application as a domain or business area, I was able to come up with one, two, three, four applications that we are going to create for this particular project. Okay, so for this series, we are not going to handle the user because I'm going to handle the user in the next video, where we're going to talk about building custom users. So for now, we're going to create just the project, tags, and link. Okay, so in my make file, I have the command for that. I don't have the command for that. So I'm going to add the command for that. Okay, so to create an application in Django, we can use the python manage.py starts app, and we specify the name of the app. Okay, but we can see here that my apps are created in the app folder. Okay, so for that to work, I need to first cd into apps. Once I cd into app, then I can run this command while referencing the manage.py in the previous directory. Okay, that's a lot of work. Added to that, I need to add these settings as well. So to save some time, I'm going to add the shortcut here. So I'm going to call it dev stats app, and what's going to happen is I'm going to first cd into apps. Then after the cd is successful, I'm going to use the uv run, and I'm going to reference back the manage from the previous directory in start app, and I'm going to provide let's say a placeholder for me to specify the name of my application. So after that, I'm going to add the shortcuts. I'm going to add the setting to it. So this is my command. This is the command I'm going to use to create my application. So let's see if that works. So I'm going to say make dev start app. Then I'm going to provides A equals to, let's start with project, and when we check it here, we can see the project has been created in the apps folder. So I'm going to do the same thing for task, and the same thing for what's that, link. Okay, so we can see all my application has been created. We have the link, we have the project, and we have the task. So the first thing I'm going to do is to adjust the setting, because normally Django understands when the application is created in the working directory, but now that we have moved it in a directory called apps, we need to change a few things. So I'm going to start with the tags, with the bottom one. So I'm going to go to the apps.py. So we can see here the name says tags. Okay, if you try to run this, it's going to fail because it considers that the application comes from the working directory. So to handle this, I'm going to say apps dot, it means that it comes from the apps folder. Okay, and we can have a lot of issues if we want to avoid secular import in our model by using the string reference. Okay, by referencing the model using the string. So I'm going to come back to that once we get to the model, but in order to fix that, I'm going to put a label, because this dot here can cause a lot of issue. So I'm going to put the label, and the label is going to contain the name without the dot, so that we can call this as the app instead of calling apps.tags as the app. Okay, and I can also put the variables here, and I'm gonna call it tags. So this is how this app will be displayed in your Django admin dashboard. Okay, so once we have that, we can save it and move on to the next one, which is project, and we do the same thing. So this is going to be apps.project, and the label is going to be apps_project, and the variables will be projects. So we move on to the next one, which is the link. Do the same thing. So it's going to be app_label app_link, and the variables is going to be apps link. Sorry. Okay, so once we have that, the next thing is to inform Django about this application. So where do we do that? We go to the settings, and in the base.py, where we have the install app. So here we need to inform Django about the new application. Okay, if we don't do that, then migration will not be possible. So Django will not recognize any model that we put in that particular application. So we already separated this list such that it will be very easy for us to place our custom application, third-party application, and maintain the default application. So yeah, I'm going to start with the first one, which is the app. I'm going to start with the first one, this one, the project. So I'm going to move to the apps, and from the apps I will move to the project. From the project I'm going to move to the apps again, these apps here, and from there I'm going to copy this class. So this is another good way to inform Django about your application. You can use this format. Okay, so we're going to do the same thing with the others. So next one I'm going to use I'm going to link the task. So I guess it's going to be task config, and next one is going to be apps link config, and just to be sure, config. All right, so we'll start by handling the model at the level of the project application. Then we're going to move to the other ones. So if you open the project application, you're going to see a file called models.py. So this is where you will normally have your Django model. Okay, based on our requirement, we are going to have 3 models in the project application. So personally, I like to have 1 model per file. All right, but here we have 3. Okay, Well, I like to do that for so many reasons. One is for collaborative purposes. Okay, it makes it easy to collaborate, so we don't need to step on each other toes. All right, so if somebody is working on the project model, another person can work on the category without any conflict. The second one is it makes it clean and maintainable as well. So for that reason, I'm going to use a technique in Django called splitting the models into packages. All right, so what that does is that in my application, I'm going to create a folder called models, and in that folder I'm going to create my .init, my init file, and for each of these model I'm going to create a separate file. So the first one is going to be project.py, the second one is going to be, let's just say, category.py, and the next one is going to be subproject.py. And once we have that, we can go ahead and delete this models.py file because we won't need it anymore. Okay, so right now we can see it makes it cleaner. Okay, we can handle each model in their respective files. Alright, so this is the design that we have from the first video, I think, and we established this class diagram, and we are going to focus on the project for now, the project class or the project model. And we can see we have the name, which is a string, description, which is going to be a text, and the username or the user ID is going to be linked to this user model. So we are not going to handle this for now. Once we establish our custom users, we will link this to our project. Okay, so here we have the start date, which is optional, the end date optional as well, and the created at and modified at. But now this might be a design issue because we have the created at and modified at already defined in our abstract model. Added to that, we have the ID and the UID, and we said the UID is going to be used externally while the ID is used internally. So with this design out of the way, let's see how we can model this in our app, in our project application. So we're going to move to the project application, then the model, and click on the project. So the first thing we want to do is to import the model from DjangoDB because this will be used to define our fields. And the next thing we want to do is to import from the apps.core.model. We want to import the abstract model, and we're going to define our model. We're going to call it project, and it's going to inherit the abstract model. Okay, so this inheritance provides whatever has been defined in the abstract model, that is the ID, UID, and so on and so forth. So what is left, looking at the design, so I'm gonna just bring that up here so that we have them I have it alongside my code. Okay, so looking at the design, we see that we need to define the name, and the name is a char field, and I'm gonna set the maximum length to be 200. The next thing is gonna be the description, which is gonna be a text field. Okay, of course I would like to do the description optional. We can see here on the design it's not optional. That's why from time to time we'll move back and forth between the project and between the design and the implementation to see how we can adjust things. So here I'll put my null equals to true and my blank equals to true. So how does this work? So the null equals to true work at the level of the database, and the blank equals to true work at the level of the Django admin form. So if you are operating through the Django admin form, you want to make sure the forms can accept empty string, while here we'll make sure that the database can accept null values. And once we have that, and we'll have the start dates, which is when the project started. If you start a project, you can set up the start dates, and we're gonna use the date field from Django, and it is of course optional, so we're gonna do the same thing. And I'm gonna just copy this so that I can replicate for my end dates. Okay, like I said, the user ID won't be handled here for now, so I'm gonna say to do set user ID equals to custom ID. Once we build the custom ID, we're going to set it there. And the next thing we want to do is to provide the relationship between the project and the link. The link has not been created yet, so I'm just going to put a to do as well here to remind me that I have to set the link to the many-to-many relationship. Okay, now once we have all the fields, I would like to provide a few methods. Okay, so the first method I want to provide is a method that's going to return a shorter version of our description. So we can see the description can contain so many texts. So I'm going to make it a property, and I'm going to call it short description like this, and it's going to return, let's say it's going to return the first 30 characters. Okay, so we're going to say return, I'll use f string, so description, and I'm going to return the first 30 character. Now that would be possible if the description, of course, is defined. Okay, if self description, else I'm just going to return an empty string. Then at the end I'm going to just add some this 3 dot to indicate that this string is longer than the 3 characters. And the next method I'm going to add here is the $string method. You know, when you operate on the model through the terminal, it's going to print an object that is not human readable. So we want to make sure we use the $string to provide a human readable object that we can actually understand. Okay, so I'm going to set up my $string here, and here I'm going to return the name and also maybe a few information like the start dates and the end dates. So the next thing I want to do is to define some meta information. So Django has this class that we can use, class meta, that can be very useful. Here we are going to define the uniqueness of this table. So I want to define a composite unique value. If I want to define a single unique value, I can just go to the specific field and say unique equals to true. But this means that this name will be unique throughout the application. Okay, but this is not what I want to do, because each user will be able to create an account and create their project. Okay, so the uniqueness of the project should be it should be a composite between the user ID and the name. Okay, so I'm going to create it here, but for now, since the user has not been created yet, I'm just going to say set unique together will be equals to user ID once it is created and the name. So the next thing is the ordering. Okay, I want to make sure that when we query this model, or when we query this table, it's going to come in a default order, and I want it to come in the order of the first project modified. Okay, so I'm going to say ordering equals to, this should be an iterable, so modified at. I have modified at defined at the level of the abstract model. So the last thing I want to do here is to add some constraint. So we have to play along with the start date and end date. For example, a user can start their project and they are going to set the start date, but the end date will be null. Okay, because they have not yet ended the project. And once they end the project, the end project should be greater than or equals to the start date, meaning that you cannot start on the 15th of February and end on the 1st of February. It doesn't make sense. Okay, so the end date should be equal to or greater than the start date. And also we can have the end date set without having the start date set. Okay, so those are the various constraints that we need to add in this project. So to do that, I will use the class meta, and here I'm going to say constraints, and this is going to contain my constraint. So it takes in a list, and the list will contain all the constraints that I want to set for this particular model. So the models that we imported here comes with the check constraint that we can use. Okay, so this is going to check the various values, okay, before they are inserted in your database. Okay, so the first property that we want to set for this check constraint is the name of the constraint. Okay, and the name should be a unique name. All right, so that's why Django actually recommends that we use this this I don't know how to call it, this format. Okay, so we specify the app label that's going to reference the app label that we had in the app.py, and we specify the name of the class, and now we can add anything that we want to add. So yeah, I'm gonna say end date check. Let me just call it like that. Maybe the name is not good, but let's just see. And the second attribute is actually the check. So this is where we do our check. Okay, so for this case, I'm gonna use the models.q, or let me just do it like this because it's gonna contain a lot of code here. So model.q. So the first case is the end date is null, false, and the start date is null, false. So this first case means that what the two actually have information. Okay, the end date and the start date, they both have information. The second one is, I'm gonna say or model dot, or I'm gonna put the remove this comma here, or models.q. So the second case is the start date is null and the end date is null. So what does this mean? When you start your project, you set up the start date. You have not yet ended the project, so the end date will be null. Okay, and the last condition would be the start date is true and the end date is true. Okay, just to recap, this first one means that you have completed your project. So it means that the start date and the end date has been set. So you have completed your project. The second one means that you started the project, but you have not yet completed the project. So the start date has been set, but the end date has not been set. And the last one means that you have not started working on that project because the start date and the end date have not been set. So anything other than these will raise an exception. Okay, after setting up the model or your new model, the next thing you want to do is to migrate it. But if you remember, we haven't done an initial migration. Okay, so the best practice is that when you start your Django application, you need to do an initial migration. This is because if you go to the settings, you will see that Django comes with some default application, and each of these have their models, okay, that you need to migrate so that Django can create them in your database. Okay, so I'm going to run first my initial migration, and later on I'll come back to my custom migration. So at this moment, Django does not actually know about this model because you can see it is in a folder called models. I'll come back to that, but the first thing we want to do is to go ahead and run our first migration. If you check the database, for example, if you check all the tables that are found in this database, we can see it says did not find any tables. So let's go ahead and run our first migration, and to do that I'm going to check my make file Here we have the shortcut for migrate. So the first thing we want to do is to run migrate, and the migrate is going to take the default application, create that corresponding table in the database. Now, once we create our custom model, we can first do the make migration before doing the migrate. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. First thing first, do the def migrate, and it's going to run the initial migration. All right, so we can see everything works successfully. If we check on the terminal again, we will see that we have all these tables that were created from the default application. All right, so like I said, Django does not actually know about my model, because if I go ahead and just run make migrations, nothing will happen. So let's see, def make migrations, it says no changes detected. This is because Django does not actually know where my models are. Okay, so this is where my model is found, and I want to migrate this. So what I'm going to do for all the other files that I have here is to go to my underscore init and import it here. Okay, so once I import it here, Django will be able to recognize it, because Django recognizes this model folder as a module. Okay, so to expose everything that we have in these different files, we need to import them in this underscore init, because this files runs once Python identifies this particular folder. So we're gonna say from .project import project. So once we have that, Django will be able to see that particular file or that particular model. So let's go again and run the make migration this time. So we can say system check, it says ordering must be a tuple. I don't know if I did that, if I made it a tuple. I think I made it a tuple, but I made it this way. All right, so this is a common mistake in Python, because this is not a tuple. Okay, a tuple with a single character should have a comma at the end. All right, so that's what I missed the first time. And once I have that fixed, I can go ahead and run the make migration again. I can see the Django Python script has been created in the migration folder. So we can see the first one is going to start with 0001 initial. Okay, if we go into this file, we're going to see Django Python scripts, that these are instructions that Django can use to create your table on Postgresql. Once we have that instruction created, we can now migrate. Now the migrate is going to take this instruction from this file and use it to create your table in the database. So I have that command in my make file as well, just to be sure. All right, so that's it up there. So I'm going to say make def migrate, and we have this. So I have migrated my first custom module. So let's go to the next one. Okay, so the next one will be the sub project. But before we do the sub project, let's do the category, because we can see here the category is linked to the sub project through a many-to-many relationship. So let's handle the category first. So in the category here, we do the same thing. So from Django.db, we're going to import models, and we're going to import from app score model, import abstract model, and we're going to call it category. It's going to inherit the abstract model. And after inheriting the abstract model, we have the name. We can see that the name is kind of like common to all the different model. So I'm sure that at the end, I'm going to move the name to the abstract model here. So for now, let's just have them there. And this is going to be char field, and the maximum length is going to be 200. The next thing we have is the color. Let's say the color here is also a char field, and we are going to use the hex color. The hex color looks like this. It has the hash, and some few, you know, letters and numbers and so on and so forth. So they have a length. It has a length of 7, including the hash that we see here. So the length here is going to be 7, and we're going to create a validator to make sure that the string that is sent here is actually a hex color. Okay, so I think once we have the color, the created add and modified add are already inherited from the abstract model, and the next thing I want to do is just my dunder string to make sure that we provide a human readable object. Okay, so it's gonna be return, let's use f string, let's put the name and the color, yeah, something like that. Okay, so another thing is that you can see here category. Okay, the plural of category is categories with IES, but Django has a funny way of of representing a plural nouns. Okay, it just adds s, so you'll be surprised that in your Django admin it's gonna be category with ys that represent plural. So to handle that, we can use the meta that sets metadata of our class and set the verbose plural or name plural to the right plural, which is going to be categories like this. Okay, with that set, I think let's see, it seems like the color is optional, so we're going to make it optional here. So let me just comment out this, and let's say null equals to true and blank equals to true. And also this category will be created by a specific user. Okay, so we want to use, just set it to do and say that user ID equals to, so I'm going to set the user ID once I create our custom user. Okay, so with that, I can go ahead and do my migration. So before I do my migration, I'm going to import it just like I did for the project. So in my underscore init, I'm going to say from dot category import category. So once that is done, I can go ahead and run my migration. So first thing first, run my make migration so that the Django Python script will be created in the migration folder. Once that is created, I can now use my def migrate to use that script and create the table in the database. All right. Okay, so the next one is a sub project. Like I said, we can see the sub project is linked with the categories through a many-to-many relationship, and we have the project is also linked to the sub project through a foreign key. Okay, so let's see what we can do. So we make sure we are in the sub project model. So sub project, and we're gonna from Django.db import model, and we're gonna import also from apps core.model import abstract model, and you're gonna call it sub project inherit abstract model. Okay, so we see here that the first one is gonna be, of course, the name that is repeating. So we're gonna find a way to remove that, and it's gonna be 200. The next one, description. Somehow description also, you know, appears or is redundant, and we're gonna make it optional. Null equals to true, blank equals to true. So after writing our fields, okay, we're going to see some modification, or we're going to refactor our model to see what we can remove and put in a base class or a base model. Okay, so once we have the description, we have the start date. The start date and the end date looks like it's going to be the same for our project. Okay, so for now, I'm just going to copy them and have them here. We can see here that we have the project ID. Okay, so the project is going to be linked to the project. So here we're going to have project equals to, we use a foreign key. Now in Django, this is what we call string-based foreign key reference. Okay, and this is recommended by Django to avoid circular import issues, because if we go ahead and import, let's say we import the project module here, and it happens that in the project module we have to import also the sub project, it can create some kind of circular import issue, okay, or circular dependency in our model. So to avoid that, Django recommends that we use the string based foreign key reference, and this is the format. You start with the app, the name of the app, dot the name of the model. So you see that when we are setting up our application in the apps.py, if we had maintained this, it would have caused a lot of issue, okay, because this is the name of our app. The name of our app is apps.project, but because this would have caused some issue, we had to use the label, and now the label will be the one representing our apps. So if we go back to this, how do we access the project? So it's going to be apps underscore project dot, now the model is project. Okay, so once we have that, we can decide what should happen if the project is deleted. So what should happen to the sub project if the project is deleted? We have so many cases here. One of them is cascade, meaning that if this project is deleted, then the sub project that is related to that project will be deleted as well. Our sub project can be categorized, or many categories can be linked to our sub project. So this is going to be like a many-to-many relationship. So I'm going to say categories and many-to-many fields. Same thing. Here I'm going to say it's going to be linked to apps underscore category. And here we have category. Okay. Now, the onDelete does not have any effect on the many-to-many field. Okay. So what is very important for us to set for our many-to-many field is the related name. What the related name help us to do is to use reverse foreign key lookup. So we'll come back to that later on. But for the reverse lookup, we are going to use here sub project. So meaning that when we are at the level of the category, for each category, we can use reverse foreign key lookup to get all the sub projects that are attached to that particular category. So we can see here the link is also linked to our sub project through the many-to-many relationship, but the link is not yet defined, so I'm just gonna have to do here set link to whatever it will be. Okay, I think we have everything set up, and the constraint that was applied for our project on the start date and end date will also apply here, and we're also going to have a method to return a short description. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. So the first thing is to have that property. So I'm just going to copy it from, let's say, from here. So we can see that many things repeats. Okay, so after that, we're going to see how we can refactor everything to make it clean. So for the short description property, everything looks good. For the dunder method, we have the name and the start and the end. All right, so I think that should be good. And the next thing we want to do, I'll copy the constraint that I have here, and have it down here. Okay, so the unique together is also going to be the user ID. Okay, it's not going to be the user ID because you know the project, the sub project is linked to a project here. Okay, so we don't need to link the user anymore. All right, so the sub project will be identified by the relationship it has with the project. So here I'm just going to make sure that the unique here is project and name. So the unique is going to be the project itself, that is linked to this sub project and the name here. So here I'm gonna set this unique together to be project and name. So they are both strings, and the ordering will be modified at, and here we have this, and I think at the level of the categories, we can see here the categories somehow uses a constraint. So only a maximum of 5 category can be linked to our sub project. So we have so many ways we can do that check. Okay, but yeah, I'm gonna show just one way. Okay, but we need to, so let me just put a to do here, or let me just use this to indicate that the clean method is useful for admin forms validation. Okay, and to validate, let's say in ORM, we need to use either a serializer or let's just say signal, but I'm sure that I'm gonna use serializers to kind of like validate the this condition as well. But for this, in this case, I can use the clean. So I can use my clean method, but this clean method is not always called, especially when you perform ORM operation. Okay, it is mostly called in forms when you use forms. And yeah, what we can do is that we first call the super. After calling the super, we want to check if serve category dot count is greater than 5. So if it is greater than 5, then we want to raise a validation error. Okay, so I'm gonna import that validation error somewhere here. So from Django DB or core exception, Django, oh my god, core exception import validation error. So if it is more than 5 categories, then we want to raise validation error and say a project cannot have more than 5 categories. So like I said, this will only work when we are dealing with forms. Okay, but when we're dealing with ORM, like let's say the dot at method or the dot set method of the many-to-many relationship, this may not be called. So we're going to handle that when we move to serialization or serializers. With our sub project setup, let's do the migration. Hopefully we don't have any errors there, and we're gonna go ahead and do make migration. No change detected. We know why, right? So we're gonna go ahead to our underscore init and say from sub project import sub project to expose it. Then we're gonna try again. So we have some errors at the level of the define a relation with model category. Fail, which is neither install nor abstract. So do we have anything like apps underscore category? No, I'm not sure, because everything here is found under the apps underscore project. So we go back to our sub project, and just at the level of the category, we're gonna say apps underscore project, because the category is found in the apps project, and the app project define the label in apps.py as apps underscore project. So we make sure we adjust that, and you know, it happens all the time. So we go ahead and try it again, and we have apps projects. Is it projects? Oh my god, apps projects. without S. So let me fix that again and try it. All right, so now I'm gonna do my migration, my migrates. Perfect. All right, so we have set up all our models for the project application. Now let's see what we can do to let's see how we can refactor this to make it better. We can see at the level of the project, we have the project, sub-project, and category. Okay, and we can see that the name actually the name is duplicated throughout the various model, and we can also see the link, the tags, the label, the tags key, and subtags. All of them have the name, okay, except for the user, of course. All of them have the name, so it will be right for us to move the name field to the abstract model. So let's do that. So I'll go to the abstract model here and add the name in here, just here, name equals to char field, and set it to 200 length. Okay, now in each of these model in the project application, I'm going to remove the name. Yeah, save it. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to remove this name, and same thing here, I'm going to remove this name here. All right, so just to make sure that everything is okay, so just run make migration, and we can see there's no change that has been detected. So the next thing is going to be we can see at the level of the level of these checks. Okay, we can see here that the start date and end date both belongs to the sub project and the project. Okay, and they have the same check here. So I want to make this a little bit more, especially at the level of the check, because there's a lot here. Okay, there's a lot here. So I'm gonna remove this check here, and I'm gonna create a util folder at the level of the project application, and I'm gonna import it here. So first of all, I'm gonna first do the Django DB import models, and I'm gonna say start date end date check is gonna be equal to this. Okay. And also that reminds me, we are missing another check here. Remember, we said if the start date and the end date are set together, then the end date should be bigger or equal to the start date. So we don't have any check here that kind of like, or we don't have a constraint that actually check that condition here. So let's make sure that we have that in our util. Okay, so I'm gonna just say let's say end date greater or equals to start date check. Okay, so here it's gonna be a very simple check here. So we want to make sure that the end date is greater or equals to the start date. Okay, so it's gonna be model.f start date. Okay, so just a reminder, when we are referring to a field on the right hand side, we have to make sure that we use the model.f. Okay, if not, you're gonna have some errors. So we have these two, and we can go ahead and save these and import them at the level of the project and the sub project. So let me just start with the project. So I'm gonna say from apps.project.util import these two. I'm gonna import them, and here I'm gonna say this will be no, the first one first starts. Okay, so once I have that, I'm going to add the second constraint that we just did. So it's going to be comma models dot check constraint, and the name here is gonna be, we're gonna use the same format, app label, whatever that label will be, and the class, whatever that class will be, and let's call it end date start date check. Okay, the name may not be self-explanatory, but let's just let's just see how we can use that. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna use the end like this. Okay, so this is gonna be the same for my sub project. So I think I'm just gonna copy this, okay, and move to the sub project and just paste it here, and make sure I import the start date and the end date constant. So from apps.project.util import start and okay. So just to make sure that everything works as expected, there's no modification. Okay, I just did some refactoring, so no migration should happen. Okay, the migration should happen because we added the second checker. Okay, so we added the second checker. This is for the project and this is for the sub project. So we're gonna do migration. Okay, so we are moving on to the next application, and we have two more applications to go. We have the tags and the link, and it seems like the link will be the easiest one. Okay, it has just one table or one model. So let's handle this so that we can easily use the many-to-many relationship in the tags application and also in the project application. So we're gonna move on to the link, and yeah, we have to deal only with one table or one model. So I'm gonna import from apps.core.model abstract model, and I'm gonna call it link. It's gonna inherit the abstract model, and apparently this has just the URL, and it's gonna have the user as well, because even though the application, the design does not indicate, but normally the user should have a link to the, or a relationship to the link. Okay, a link is created by a user, so we are going to have the URL, the name that is already in the abstract base class, the user ID, and everything else that falls in there. So we're gonna have the user ID, of course. When we complete our custom user, we're gonna set it here, and the name is already in the abstract model, so we're gonna have the URL equals to URL field from Django, and let's just say the length is gonna be 500 here. So coming back to this diagram, we can see everything has been taken care of. We won't be having these different foreign keys, because the idea I had before was to use a generic foreign key, but I later found out that generic foreign key in Django is not recommended. So I decided to put all the different foreign keys in their various fields, which is also not really a good idea, because let's say a link is linked to the project, it means that the sub project and the tags will be null. Okay, so I decided to change it and use many-to-many relationship, meaning that a link can be linked to many links can be linked to a tax or a project or a sub project, whatever it will be. All right, so yeah, I think that's it for this one, and I'm just gonna define my Dunder string. Gonna return the serve.name that comes from the abstract model and the URL. All right, and of course, once we have the custom user setup, we are going to make sure that it is any link that the user create is unique to that user. Okay, so we are going to set up the unique together to be the user ID and the URL. Okay, So let's go ahead and migrate this. Okay, so let's do some refactoring again, and this time around it's going to be the description. We can see the description belongs, we can find description in projects, sub-projects, task result. So I think it should be in its separate abstract model. Alright, so we'll go at the level of the core in model. So we're going to define it here. We can call it abstract des model. It's going to inherit the model.model, and so I can copy the description of, let's say, let me take it from here. So I'm going to take it alongside the property. So making sure that this is abstract. Okay, so with that, I can import it where it is needed. So let's start with the project. So here we can see, gonna import the abstract description model, and we're gonna inherit it here, and we remove the description, and we remove this method. So of course migration is not going to change. Okay, the migration command is not going to detect any change because we are just refactoring. We're not adding any field or removing any fields. So same thing here, and the methods as well. Okay, and I think that's it. Now the second one is going to be at the level of the color. We can see the color, we said the color is going to support hex string or hex color, which is going to be 7 characters long. Okay, and it's going to start with hash. So in this case, we see that color is supported in subtags, color is supported in label, color is supported in category. Okay, so we're going to have that validation in the core. So we're going to have the validation here. So I'm going to say validation or validator, I don't know, validators. Okay, and for the validator, we're going to make sure that we import regular expression. We're going to use regular expression to make sure that the string that is provided is a hex color. So from Django core exception, in case it fails, we're going to raise the validation error, and let's call it is hex color. It's going to take in the attribute. The attribute in this case is a dictionary of string, and it's going to return a dictionary of string, or it's going to return a no return. So when an exception is raised, there's no return. Okay, so let's just make sure that I say I import it here from typing import no return. So you're gonna have or no return. Okay, so let me put a doc string just to be sure that we know what we're doing. Check to make sure color is a hex color. So we're gonna extract the color from the attributes since it's a dictionary. Okay, if nothing is, if the attribute does not have the color, if the attributes here does not have the color attribute, then we return an empty string. Okay, if bool regular expression full match, so it's gonna start with hash, and it's gonna check to make sure that we have either 0 to 9 or A to F, or uppercase A to uppercase F. So this is gonna be 3 character, okay, or we're gonna have 0 to 9 or lowercase a to F, uppercase A to uppercase F, and this is gonna be 6 characters. So we check it against the color attribute that was extracted from this dictionary. So if that is true, then we return the attribute, kind of like giving a go ahead. Let me just put S here, because so many attributes can be given here. If that fails, then we want to raise a validation error and say color has to be a hex color. Okay, with that, we can move to the various model. Let's start with the project. I don't know, category needs it. So we're gonna say from apps.core.validator import is hex color, and on this field, this char field, we're gonna say validator equals to, then we pass it there, is hex. So let me check here at the level of the diagram. So we can see color is going to be used in the tax application at the level of the label, the subtax as well. So we have it already set at the level of the category. Okay, perfect. Alright, so at the level of the tax application, to save time, I just went ahead and coded it. So I'm just going to explain what I did. So at the level of the tax application, I need to provide a model for tax, label, subtax, and also tax results. So if you go to my tax application, you can see I already created the different files that represent each model in the model package or in the model folder. So I'm just going to make sure that I delete this file here, because it's not needed. And let's start with the tax. So the tax is pretty simple. We just make sure that we imported the abstract models, the abstract description model that comes with the description, and also the abstract model that comes with the public key, the created art, modified art, and so on. And also we imported the validator, okay, that makes sure that the string that is provided for the color is a hex color. Now our tax is going to inherit the abstract model and the abstract description model, and here we provide the mode, because here at the level of the diagram we can see the modes here describe the various status or the various mode in which the tax is going to belong. We have the different one that was determined in the planning stage. We have tax, okay, so this is going to be the default, and you can move it to today if you want to do it today, do today, and in progress if you are working on it already, testing if it's in the testing phase, done if it's done, stock if you're stuck, or suspended if it's suspended. So these are the various mode in which a tax can belong. And you can see here I'm using a little bit a modern way to define the attribute of the choices of your char field, the char field field. Okay, so we have here the choices attribute, and it takes in this particular status that was defined above here, and the status is a class that inherits the text choice, and here it uses the format of having the constant that is here, and on your right side you have a tuple. The first item of the tuple is the information that will be stored in the database, and the second item is what will be displayed to the user. So the sub project, the task is linked to a sub project, and it is a foreign key, and the priority here says the lesser the higher the priority. Okay, so and yeah, this is where we set the status. The status is going to be it will be a char field with the choices attributes, and the default is going to be task, and the due date. Okay, you want to set the due date for all your tasks, and we have the color. The color that uses the validator is hex color, and we see here that the label is linked to the tags through a many-to-many relationship, and the links is also linked to the tags through the many-to-many relationship. You can see here they don't have the related name like we set in the other models. Okay, they don't have the related name. This is because here I figured out that the related name will kind of like be the same for this guy and this guy here. So rather than duplicating this code here, I will rather define it at the level of the meta and say the default related name is task. Okay, of course you want to use this format because this is what is recommended with Django, but in my case I'm just going to use task here. So here we have the Donda string method, and we have the unique together. So the unique together here is going to be the name of the task and the sub project it is linked to, and the ordering is going to be ordered at the ordered by the priority. Okay, so the negative sign here means I think in descending order, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, so this is what we have for our task. Now moving forward to the subtask. Subtask is pretty short. We have the subtask is linked to the task through a foreign key, and we have the done to make sure that when we are done with the subtask we can tick this as done. This we can see yes boolean, and it defaults to false, and the color of course has the validator is hex color, and we have the Donda string and the unique together, meaning that the subtask will be unique if the name will be unique using the name and the task. Moving to the label, we can see the label here. When we'll be done with our custom user, we will link it to the user ID, but the label just has the color, and the color uses the validator that we defined already, and we have our Donda string. And once we are done with the user ID, yeah, we can set the unique together to be the user ID and the name. And the last but not least, we have the key result. The key result inherits these two guys, meaning that it's gonna also have the description, and we have the tags. The key result is linked to the tag through a foreign key, and we have the complete here. I don't know if that complete was added in the diagram. I can't see any complete here, so you see I had to change this because of course if the QA is the one checking this key result, then once the QA determine that this key result is completed, then the QA needs to set it as done or as complete. So we have here complete to handle that. It defaults to false, and we have the Donda string and the unique together to be the name of the key result and the task it is linked to. So now I'm going to migrate them, but I'm going to migrate them one at a time. Okay, so back to my tags, I'm going to go to my underscore init, and I'm going to import them one at a time and migrate them. So the first one I'm going to start with is with the independent one, the ones that does not have foreign key attached to them. So we can see the label. So I'm going to import the label here from .label import label. So once I have that, I'm going to migrate it. Okay, we have some errors. So there's something wrong with my VS Code. I think when I save, I think it usually adds some extra information. So this is something that I need to figure out. Okay, so once I have that fixed, oh my god, again sub project has the same thing. That's strange. What about category? No. Okay, so let me see. All right, so once I have that, I'm gonna migrate. Okay, and the next one is going to be, let me see, this next one is gonna be the tax. I think so. Okay, because we had already the link, we have the label. Okay, so I guess this is gonna be the next. So from dot tax, import tax, hopefully. Okay, so the next one is gonna be I think the subtask. Yeah, the subtask. So from dot subtask, import subtask. Make migration first, then migrate. And last but not least, from key results, import key results. So yeah, we have a few modifications again. If you go back to the project application, we can see that we have to set up the link here. So because we are done with the link application, we can easily set it here. So yeah, I'm just gonna say, I'm gonna put it like this, and it's gonna be link, okay, call links, and link with a link model through many-to-many relationship, and the related name is gonna be project. Okay, I think this is the only many-to-many relationship I have for now. Okay, this error again. Okay, so with that, I'm just gonna migrate it. Okay, moving to the sub projects, I also have to set this link here. Okay, but now we have like two many-to-many relationships. They're gonna have the same related name. So I'm gonna do the same thing that I did for my task. I'm just gonna remove, let me just copy this, remove this, save it, and move at the level of the class meta, and just here I'm gonna say default related name equals to. Okay, so the default related name will apply to all the two many-to-many relationship that we have here. So with that, we can go ahead and make migration and migrate. And that was it for this video. In the next video, we're going to take a look at building a custom user. Then we're going to fill the gap in the different model that we created today. Alright, so if you're new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe, to share, to comment, and to like in order to support the content. Code with Eno. See you in the next video.